I pulled into Route 61 self-storage at 10 minutes to 6 on the 6th of October. Dolores Caskey works the desk there 3 mornings a week, and she had called my kitchen the night before about something she thought was nothing. Dolores said my son had been letting himself in after 9 at night and leaving before the gate log started. She said he had asked her whether the roll-up doors set off an alarm from the inside. Then she said the part she thought was nothing. Wanda, he had Nora with him Wednesday, Dolores said. She brought her own pillow. I did not sleep. I lay on top of the quilt with my knee aching and counted the hours, the way I used to count a column that would not close. The aisle lights were still burning when I got there. I saw the truck first. Stan's old burgundy Silverado backed in nose out. Then Unit 118, the door raised about 2 feet. Then the padlock hanging open on the hasp with a small green tag looped through it. Then a folded blanket just inside and a child's pink backpack standing upright on the concrete like it was waiting on a school bus. Then my son came out from under that door on his hands and knees, and he had lost 20 pounds since Easter. Welcome back to Thistlebank Stories, where the overlooked finally get back what's theirs. If this is your first story with me, subscribe and tell me in the comments what town this one is finding you in. Now let me back up because none of it started in that parking lot. My name is Wanda Kosek, I-67. For 31 years, I was the chief accountant at Hale Valve Works out where the Halverton Road bends toward the water tower. That shop ran 3 shifts back then and shut the whole place down for the first 2 weeks of July. I am not a clever woman. I am a careful one. Numbers never lied to me because I never let them get comfortable. My husband Stan used to tell people I could smell a crooked figure through a sealed envelope, and he was only half joking. Stan has been gone 4 years this coming February. Stan and I bought the house at 14 Mahantango Street in 1983. We paid the last of it off in 2011. I still have the canceled check in a shoebox because that is the kind of woman I am. Free and clear. No mortgage, no lien, nothing owed on it to anybody living. Our son Danny is 39. He runs a plasma table at a fabrication shop in Frackville, 41 hours most weeks, and he has his father's habit of apologizing for taking up room. He married Brianne 11 years ago at St. Anne's. Brianne runs the front desk at an orthodontist's office in Pottsville, and she is good at it. Insurance forms, prior authorizations, that whole paper world. People liked her. I liked her. Their girl is Nora. Nora is 9, and she has been in and out of my kitchen since she could walk. The doorway between my kitchen and the back hall has her whole life penciled up it in dated lines. Stan started that with Danny in 1990, and I was not about to be the one who stopped it. On the windowsill over my sink there is a quart jar of buttons, my mother's, then mine. Every button off every coat this family ever wore out is in there. In March of this year, I had my right knee replaced at Good Samaritan in Pottsville, the 9th of March. I want to be fair to Brianne here because this is the part everybody skips when they tell a story like mine. Brianne drove me. She sat in that waiting room the whole time. She brought me a strawberry milkshake from the cafeteria because I could not have anything solid yet, and she held the door of her car open with her hip while I got my leg in. That is the truth, and I am going to leave it standing. For 6 weeks after she came by, she brought the mail in. She figured out the shower chair. And I was on those pain pills, the ones that make an afternoon feel like a hallway. I let her handle things. I want anybody listening to hear me say that out loud because letting her handle things is the only part of this I still have to forgive myself for. By June, my knee worked. By July, the mail started telling on somebody. The county sends the real estate tax bill in the middle of July, and it has come to my kitchen table every July since 1983. I opened it standing up, the way I do everything now, and my own name was not alone on it anymore. Under Kosek Wanda M., the county had printed Kosek Daniel S. and Kosek Brianne T. I read it 3 times. Then I called Danny, and Danny did not know what I was talking about, and something in how fast he said it made me stop pushing. Then I called the county assessment office, because that is what a person does who spent her working life going to the source. A young woman read it off her screen to me in the flat voice anybody has at 4 in the afternoon. Deed recorded the 11th of March. Transfer no consideration. Grantor Wanda M. Kosek. Grantee Daniel S. and Brianne T. Kosek. She asked whether there was anything else, and I said, no thank you, and I hung the phone back on the kitchen wall where it has hung since Reagan. Then I called Brianne. Brianne's voice went smooth, then the way a number goes smooth after somebody has already rounded it. Mom, that's the estate planning, Brianne said. We sat right there and went through it. Danny and I go on the deed. You stay in the house your whole life, and when the time comes, there's no probate, no attorney fees, nothing for anybody to fight over. You were so relieved. You said your mother's estate took 19 months. My mother's estate did take 19 months. I have said that sentence 100 times in my life. Anybody who has sat in my kitchen has heard it. I don't remember signing anything, I said. You were on the oxycodone, Mom, Brianne said, gentle as a nurse. You don't remember Tuesdays from that spring. And here is the thing I need to say plainly, because I have thought about it every night since. She right. I did not remember Tuesdays from that spring. That is what those pills do to a person, and she knew it, and she had watched it happen from the chair by my shower. So I let it go. I hunted through the button jar that week for a toggle off Nora's old coat. I dumped it out on the counter the way I always do. My hospital wristband came out with the buttons and skittered across the formica. I remember being annoyed by it. Good Samaritan was still billing me for something an anesthesiologist did, and I put the wristband back in with the buttons the way you put a bill back in a drawer. That was July. In August, Nora stopped coming. In September, my phone was ringing. There was no announcement. There never is. It was schedule. Then it was activities. Then it was that Nora was tired. In the 3rd week, I drove to the school office to pick her up on a Thursday, the way I have since kindergarten. The woman at the counter turned her screen a little and said kindly that I was not on the list anymore. Not that I had been removed. That I was not on the list. I asked whether there had been a note. She turned the screen back and said the parent portal showed 2 names, mother and father, and that a grandparent has to be added by a parent, and that nobody had ever added me. Which was not true. I had been on that list since Nora was in kindergarten, and I signed the card myself in that same office with a pen on a chain. I stood in that hallway with the laminated bus map and the new name tags going up on the corkboard. I did not make a scene. Making a scene is the one thing that would have proved whatever Brianne had told them about me. I sent Brianne a message from the car. I asked her plainly whether something had happened. She wrote back an hour later. Nothing happened, just streamlining while everything is up in the air. Talk soon. An exclamation point and a period. There was no apology in it, and there did not need to be. A message like that has about as much weight as a penciled entry, easy to put down, easy to lift off, and nothing left behind either way. Nora turned 9 on the 29th of August. I baked the same coconut cake I have baked for her every year. I put it in the car. I drove past the house on Cressona Road twice without stopping, then brought it home and ate 2 pieces of it standing at the sink. That was the week I noticed the doorframe. The pencil lines in my kitchen doorway stop at the 9th of March. Not because anything happened that day, because after that I could not get down on that knee to mark 1, and by the time I could, nobody was standing in the doorway to be measured. If a story like this ever comes to your family, that is the part that gets you. Not the money, the pencil. September was worse, and September was when Danny lied to me. He came by on a Sunday to look at the roof, which has needed replacing for 12 years and will need it for 12 more. He stood in the yard and told me Brianne had filed. He said it the way a man reads a total he has no intention of checking twice. He said it to the gutter, not to me. He had his hands in his jacket pockets and his chin up at the shingles Stan and I paid for in 1998, counting the bad ones so he would not have to count anything else. For how long? I asked him. Papers came the second, Danny said. And where has Nora been? With her mother. It's the normal way it goes, Ma. I asked him where he was staying. He said with a guy from the shop. I asked him if he needed money. He said no, Mom, he was fine. He had it handled. He stayed 40 minutes. He fixed the latch on the back gate that had not worked since spring and carried the trash cans down to the curb without being asked. He would not sit down at my table. At the time, I thought that was a man being busy. A man who will not sit down at his mother's table is a man who is afraid of what he will say if his hands stop. He drove off in Stan's truck at 4 in the afternoon, and I stood on my own steps and waved. There was a duffel bag and a rolled sleeping bag on the back seat, and I would have seen them if I had walked 10 feet farther down that driveway. What he did not tell me, Dolores Caskey told me by accident 3 weeks later. On the 8th of September, the locks at 22 Cressona Road were changed while he was on shift. That same evening, he stopped at Redner's for milk and a rotisserie chicken, and his card came back declined at the register in front of a line. The joint account that had held $3,275 on the 6th was sitting at zero. He did not tell me because he is Stan's son, and Stan would rather have slept in a truck than said the words out loud. Which brings me back to the 6th of October and to what my son actually said to me in that aisle. He said, "Ma, go home." Then he sat down on the concrete with his back against the door track, and he told me the rest because he was too tired to hold it anymore. 5 weeks. A space heater, he ran off an extension cord he was not supposed to have. His work clothes in a duffel bag, Nora's school clothes in a second duffel, so hers would not smell like the shop. And Nora thought it was camping. He had told her it was camping because it was the only word he could find that did not frighten her. She believed him the way a 9-year-old believes her father. She had asked whether they could do it again on Saturday. Dolores came down the aisle with her coffee about then and did not say one word about the door being open. She just looked at the padlock and said, "That's a June tag, hun. Green means the account's been on the books since summer." I heard it. I did not do anything with it. Put that somewhere and keep it. I drove home and sat in my car in my own driveway for a long time. Then I went inside and I called the orthodontist's office in Pottsville and asked when Brienne finished on Saturdays, and I put my good coat on the hook by the door. I went to 22 Cressona Road on the 11th of October, a Saturday, a little after 1. I had known that porch for 11 years. I helped stain the rail on it. Ada Teagle was 2 doors down raking. The Mullins boy was going up and down the sidewalk on one of those scooters. I mention them because I want it clear that this was not a private conversation. It happened outdoors in the middle of the afternoon, on a street where everybody knows everybody's car. Brienne came out before I reached the steps. She had a manila folder in her hand already opened, and I understood then that she had been waiting for this visit for a while and had it ready. "I thought you might come by," Brienne said. I told her I wanted to talk about Danny and about Nora and about where my son had been sleeping since Labor Day. "That was his choice," Brienne said. "He could have gotten an apartment." He decided to be dramatic about it. I told her the house on Mahantango was mine and that I did not remember any estate planning and that I wanted to see the paper. And she waved it at me. That is the only word for what she did. She had a folded copy of the deed in that folder. She opened it out and waved it in the air between us like a woman fanning herself. Ada Teagle stopped raking. Brienne said it loud enough to carry. "You signed it yourself, Mom, in March." Then she said the rest of it calm as anything. "Nobody made you do a thing. You had a witness and a notary sitting in your own kitchen. It's recorded down at the courthouse. It's been recorded since March. It goes into the marital estate the same as the cars and the retirement account, because that is what the law says about a jointly titled property. You can be angry at me. You cannot be angry at the county." I stood on the sidewalk with my purse on my arm. I did not raise my voice, and I want to be honest about why, and it was not dignity. It was that I could not think. 31 years of month-end closings, and I could not find one number to hold on to. I asked her if I could have a copy of the deed. Brienne said I could get one at the courthouse for $1 a page like anybody else. Then she went inside. Ada Teagle went back to raking so she would not have to look at me. I walked to my car past the mailbox Stan's son had set in concrete in 2019. I drove home. I let myself in the back door and I stood in my kitchen with my coat still buttoned. And here is where it turned. And it did not turn because I am brave, because I am not. It turned because I am the kind of woman who cannot leave two numbers sitting next to each other without adding them. She said March. She said it twice. She said it in front of a neighbor. I put my hand on the counter, and I said out loud, to nobody in an empty kitchen, the 9th of March I was in an operating room. The house was as quiet as the hail floor in the second week of July. I got the quart jar down off the windowsill and poured the buttons out on the counter. I picked my hospital wristband out of the pile. I sat down at the table with it and did not stand up again for 2 hours. By the time I did, I had a page and a half in front of me, and one line on it I had no idea yet how to prove. I did not call a lawyer that night. I did not know one. It was Saturday, and I have never spent money before I understood what I was buying. What I did was start a column. Left side, what I could prove. Right side, what somebody had told me. I still keep the carbon copy ledger books I bought a case of in 1998, and I used one, and I felt steadier the second the pen was moving. Monday morning, I was at the courthouse when the recorder of deeds opened. $2 got me a certified copy of the quitclaim deed transferring 14 Mahantango Street from Wanda M. Kosek to Daniel S. and Brianne T. Kosek, recorded the 11th of March, executed the 9th. Notarized by a Kimberly Stroh commission number and there was my name at the bottom, in a hand that leaned the wrong way. I have signed my name maybe 400,000 times in my life. I know which way it leans. Then came the week that nearly stopped me. There was a home equity line on my house. The clerk found it on the same index, a mortgage lien recorded in June against a property I owned outright in favor of Halverton Savings. I walked the 4 blocks to that bank, and I asked for the loan file. The young man at the desk, Terrence Boyle, was polite about it in the way that means no. "Ma'am, I can't release a customer file," Terrence Boyle said. "The borrowers on that line are Daniel and Brianne Kosek. You're not a borrower." I told him the collateral was my house. "I understand that's your position," he said. I asked him how much had been drawn. "I can't tell you that either," he said. I went home, put that in the right-hand column, and sat with it. Then I did 2 things in one afternoon. I made a report in person at the Halverton Borough Police to an officer, Renee Salazar, and signed a written statement that a document bearing my signature had been recorded without my knowledge. That gave me a number. And I looked up the attorney whose name is on half the estate work in this county, Paul Vidra, and paid him a retainer out of the account Stan and I called the roof money. Paul Vidra listened to the whole thing without writing anything down, which worried me until I understood he was waiting for one fact. "What day was the surgery?" Paul Vidra said. "The 9th of March. And who has that in writing besides you?" Good Samaritan did. Medical records took 11 days and 2 phone calls. Anesthesia start 12 in the morning. Procedure end 12:41. Discharged from recovery at 1:50 in the afternoon. My name, my date of birth, the surgeon, the anesthesiologist, and the itemized statement Good Samaritan had been mailing me all summer, matching it line for line. The last piece was the notary, and this is where it could have died. Pennsylvania makes a notary keep a journal every signer the identification shown the time of day. But a journal is a paper book in a desk drawer, and paper books get lost when they turn inconvenient. Paul Vidra said flat out that if Kimberly Stroh claimed she had none of, we would be arguing about a signature for a year and a half. The subpoena went out on the 28th of October. I did not sleep well that week either. Kimberly Stroh produced the journal. She produced it fast, and she produced it with a lawyer, and when I finally saw the page, I understood why she had not risked lying about it. Entry 9th of March. Signer Wanda M. Kosek. Identification, Pennsylvania driver's license. And there was my license number, correct to the last digit. Anybody with the run of my kitchen could have copied that off the license in my wallet while I was upstairs on a shower chair. Time of the acknowledgement, 10:40 in the morning. Paul Vidra laid the hospital record beside the journal page and let me look at the two of them as long as I wanted. At 10:40 on the 9th of March, I was 22 miles away with a tourniquet on my right leg and a tube down my throat. "Mrs. Kosek," Paul Vidra said, "we are not going to do anything with this yet." I asked him why not. He said mediation was on the calendar for the 19th of November and that Brianne's attorney had already filed her marital property list and that 14 Mahantango Street was item 4 on it. "Let her put it on the table herself," he said. Mediation room 2 at the county courthouse smells like new carpet and old coffee. There is a long table with a fake wood top and 8 chairs and a window that looks at the parking deck. The 19th of November. Frank Dubin mediating. Brianne on one side with her attorney, Alicia Renz. Danny beside me in his good shirt, which by then hung on him. Paul Vidra on my other side with one accordion folder in front of him that he did not open for 40 minutes. Now hold that room still for a second, because everything I am about to tell you was already sitting on that table when we walked in. Alicia Renz went through the marital estate the way lawyers do in order, without any heat in it. The vehicles, the retirement account, the furniture, and then item 4. The residence at 14 Mahantango Street, Halverton, Alicia Renz said. Titled jointly to both parties by recorded deed since March. My client's position is that it's marital property and should be listed for sale with the elder Mrs. Kosek retained as an occupant through a leaseback if the parties want to be generous about it. Generous. In my own kitchen. Brianne did not look at me. She looked at the mediator, and she used the same sentence she had used on my sidewalk, and it is the reason I have told this whole story. She signed it herself, Brianne said. In March. Paul Vidra opened the folder. He put down 3 pages, one at a time, squared up like a man dealing cards he has already counted. The first was the certified quit-claim deed, executed the 9th of March. He asked Alicia Renz to confirm the date on her own exhibit, and she did. The second was one photocopied page out of Kimberly Stroh's notary journal, produced under subpoena on the 3rd of November. Signer, Wanda M. Kosek, in person. 10:40 in the morning, 9th of March. The third was 4 pages from Good Samaritan Hospital. Anesthesia start 10:12. Procedure end 12:41. Recovery discharge 1:50. Then Paul Vidra sat back and said nothing at all, which is the loudest thing I have ever heard a man do. Frank Dubin read all 3 twice. Alicia Renz read them once and then put her pen down flat on the table and turned it so it was parallel with the edge, and after that she did not pick it up again. Brianne said the notary must have written the time down wrong. Paul Vidra said the hospital had also written down the anesthesiologist, the surgeon, and the 2 nurses, and that all 4 of them were still employed 22 miles from this room. Brianne said I had told her to handle it. And that is when I spoke once for about 11 seconds, which is all I had prepared. You told me I signed it myself in March, I said. You were right about March. I have gone over that room in my head 100 times since, and what I remember is not her face. It is Danny's. My son had spent 5 weeks on a concrete floor with a space heater, believing he had failed his own daughter. I watched him find out at a fake wood table that he had not failed anybody. Here is what happened after, and I am giving it to you in the order it came because there was more of it than I expected. The deed was voided. Paul Vidra filed to have the March transfer struck as a forged instrument. 11 weeks later, the court struck it, and 14 Mohantango Street went back to my name alone, the way it has read since 1983. The home equity line was $62,400, and that is the number I had not been able to get anybody to tell me in October. Halverton Savings unwound the lien against my property once the deed was gone and went after Brienne for the balance because a bank that lends against a forgery does not eat the loss quietly. The district attorney's office charged forgery. In Pennsylvania, forging a document that affects a legal right is a felony. Paul Vidra made sure the file also went to the elder abuse unit. I was 67 and post-surgical, and the person who copied my license number had been the one carrying my mail in. Financial exploitation of an older adult. They use those words. I sat in an office and heard a young prosecutor use them about my own daughter-in-law, and I had to look at the wall. Kimberly Stroh surrendered her notary commission before the state could revoke it. She had notarized a signature without the signer present because Brienne came into that orthodontist's office every week, and it seemed like a favor. That is all it takes. One favor and 30 years of somebody's living gone. The custody schedule was rewritten that spring. Danny has Nora Wednesday through Sunday. My name went back on that school pickup list on a Tuesday morning, and I stood there and made myself not cry in front of the woman at the counter. And then there was one more line item, and I want to tell it last because it is the one that still gets me at 2 in the morning. Paul Vidra had subpoenaed the rental agreement for Unit 118 at Route 61 self-storage routine. He said to establish where Danny had been living for the support calculation. Unit 118 was rented on the 3rd of June, not by Danny. It was rented by Brienne T. Kosek, in her own name, on her own card 11 days before the loan closed, and she paid it monthly and never once went there. 3 months before she filed. 3 months before she changed a lock. She had the room ready before she had the reason. I thought about Dolores Caskey standing in that cold aisle with her coffee telling me a green tag meant summer and how I had heard her say it and let it go by. Danny and Nora moved into 14 Mohantango Street in December into the 2 upstairs rooms Stan and I never did anything with. The first Saturday, Nora stood in the kitchen doorway with her heels against the wood and her chin up the way children do. Danny marked her and put the date on it. The line is 9 months lower than it should be, and none of us said so. The roof is still 12 years overdue. It can wait another year. I am not going to stand here and tell anybody that won. Danny lost 11 years and a house he was still paying for. Nora had 5 weeks in October that she is going to understand differently when she is 25. Nobody handed any of that back. What I will say is this, and then I am done. A person can take a house with a piece of paper. They cannot take the day. The day sits there in somebody's records, in a hospital's billing system, in a book in a notary's drawer, and it does not care who is telling the story. All anybody has to do is put the 2 columns side by side and add. That's all of it. Every column closes now, and there is nothing left over.